Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going on a journey into the Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going on a journey into the world of English teachers in Australia. But not just any teachers, the ones who actually learned English as a second language themselves.
Yeah, we have some incredible research to delve into.
We do.
Mhm.
We'll be unpacking excerpts from a doctoral thesis that followed the careers of 16 teachers.
That's right. It's not just about their individual stories, though. It's what those stories reveal about the whole system they work within.
You know what's so fascinating about this research? It kind of flips the script on what we think of as a good English teacher.
Right.
The researcher actually called these teachers hybrid professionals.
hmm
What do you think makes them different?
Well, one of the big things is the researcher took a really deep dive with each of these 16 teachers. They used a qualitative approach,
Yeah.
in-depth interviews. This allowed for a much more nuanced understanding of their unique experiences and how those experiences actually shape the way they teach. One key difference that stood out was that these teachers, they don't just see themselves as teachers of English. Oh no, they see themselves as like cultural ambassadors.
Oh, wow.
They use their backgrounds to connect with students from all different walks of life and create more inclusive classrooms.
So it's not just about grammar and vocabulary then.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the cultural context of language.
Precisely. And that makes a lot of sense, especially in a multicultural society like Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many of these teachers talked about how going through the process of learning English themselves actually helped them relate to their students' struggles and celebrate their successes.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Yeah, they saw the diversity of their classrooms as like a strength, not a weakness.
That's really inspiring. But I'm curious, how did these teachers end up in Australia in the first place?
That's a good question.
Were they always planning to teach here?
Their paths to teaching in Australia are also different. Some came here with the intention of teaching from the get-go, while others kind of stumbled into it, almost accidentally.
Wow.
But the thing that united them was this deep passion for the English language, and they wanted to share that passion with others.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of one of those, accidental teachers?
Sure. Take Frida, for example.
Yeah.
She had a background in English literature and even worked as part of an international flight crew.
Really?
Yeah, and it was actually on a flight that she discovered her love of teaching.
Wait, so she started teaching English while she was working as flight crew?
Well, it wasn't a formal class or anything.
Oh, yeah.
She just found herself teaching English to the 60-year-old Colombian musician.
Oh, wow.
And she just realized how much she enjoyed explaining the nuances of the language and seeing that spark of understanding in her students' eyes.
That's such a cool story.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of these teachers had these sort of aha moments where they discovered this passion for teaching.
Right.
But I bet it wasn't always smooth sailing once they got to Australia, right?
Well, you're right about that.
Yeah.
Many of them faced some pretty big hurdles, like navigating those complex visa processes or having to reprove their qualifications, even though they had years of teaching experience in their home countries.
I can only imagine how frustrating that would be.
Yeah.
To have all this experience, this passion, but be held back by bureaucratic hurdles.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just paperwork either. They had to deal with assumptions about their abilities based on their accents or where they came from.
Right.
They often felt like they had to work twice as hard to prove themselves.
It's like this feeling of being othered,
Yes.
which is a major theme that the researcher explores in this thesis. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. When we talk about being othered, we're talking about that experience of being seen as different or even inferior based on things like your accent, your race, or your nationality.
Right.
Many of the teachers in this study felt like their skills and their expertise were constantly being compared to those of native English speakers, even when they had more experience.
So it's like they're being judged on their identity rather than their abilities.
Exactly, and this had a real impact on their confidence and their sense of belonging within the profession. One teacher, Mahadi, even said, "How could I, an Asian person, teach Australian English?"
Wow, that's such a powerful statement.
Right.
It really highlights those deeply ingrained biases that they had to confront.
Right.
Did other teachers share similar experiences?
Yes, definitely. Several of them talked about feeling like their status and their expertise were constantly being questioned.
Hmm.
Quan, for example, he had a very prestigious teaching position back in Vietnam,
Okay.
but when he came to Australia, he felt like he was starting all over again.
That must have been incredibly disheartening, especially after working so hard to establish his career back home.
It was.
What did he end up doing?
Well, he had to take on several odd jobs to make ends meet, driving taxis, delivering pizzas, but he never gave up on his dream of teaching.
Wow.
He kept studying networking and eventually found a teaching position that actually valued his skills and experience.
That's a testament to his resilience.
Yeah, it is.
Did the other teachers find ways to adapt and thrive as well?
They did, and this is where the concept of hybrid professionals really starts to come into play.
Okay, I'm definitely eager to learn more about that, but before we dive into how they adapted, let's take a step back and explore their journeys before they arrived in Australia.
Okay.
What were their experiences like as English language learners themselves?
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Because, their early experiences with English really shaped their passion for the language and their desire to teach.
You're right. Understanding their backgrounds, I think, will give us a much richer understanding of their professional identities as teachers.
Exactly. And it'll help us understand how they became those hybrid professionals they are today.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. What were their experiences like as English language learners? Did they always love English, or were there moments where they struggled?
Their stories are so fascinating. Many of them described a sort of spark that ignited their love for English. For Joshua, it was reading The Picture of Dorian Gray in year 7.
Oh, wow.
She said English suddenly came alive for her,
Yeah.
expressing feelings, sending subtle messages she hadn't noticed before.
That's incredible how a single book can have such a profound impact.
Yeah.
Did the other teachers have similar experiences?
They did. Some connected with English through music, others through films or even travel. But they all talked about those moments where the language just clicked for them.
Yeah.
Where it became more than just a subject to study.
It sounds like these early encounters with English were really formative for them.
Yeah, they were.
They weren't just passively absorbing the language, they were actively engaging with it and finding meaning in it.
You're absolutely right. And these experiences played a big role in why they decided to become English teachers themselves.
Oh, wow.
They wanted to share that joy of discovery, that sense of connection that they felt through language.
So even though their paths to teaching were so diverse, there seems to be this common thread of passion and this desire to share their love of English with others.
Absolutely. And that passion just shines through in their teaching.
Yeah.
But, their journey to becoming teachers in Australia wasn't always easy.
Right.
They had to overcome a lot of challenges and adapt to a whole new system.
Yeah, so we talked about some of those challenges earlier. I'm really curious to learn more about how they navigated those hurdles and ultimately carved out their own unique space within the Australian teaching landscape.
That's a great segue into the next part of our discussion, where we'll explore how they transitioned from facing these challenges to actively shaping their professional identities as those hybrid professionals.
That's good. So these teachers, they come to Australia with this passion for teaching English, right?
Right?
But they're hit with all these new challenges.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how did they adapt? Did they try to fit into the existing system, or did they forge their own path?
Well, it's interesting. They kind of did a bit of both,
Okay.
On the one hand, they knew they needed to meet those Australian standards and expectations.
Right.
So many of them went on to get more qualifications like TESOL certifications or teaching diplomas,
Oh, wow.
even though they already had years of experience teaching in their home countries.
That must have been tough, almost like starting over.
It was, but they saw it as an investment.
Yeah.
in their professional development and a way to really show their commitment to teaching in Australia.
Okay.
But at the same time, they weren't willing to just completely erase their own identities and experiences.
So they were striking that balance
Yeah,
between adapting to a new system, but also staying true to themselves.
exactly. They were actively shaping their professional identities, becoming what the researcher calls those hybrid professionals.
Right.
They really embraced the idea that their unique backgrounds and perspectives were assets, not liabilities.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this idea of hybrid professionals comes together,
Yeah.
but it's still a bit abstract for me.
Mm.
Can you give me some concrete examples of how these teachers put this into practice?
Sure, absolutely. One way they did this was by really being proactive about their professional development.
Okay.
They were choosing opportunities that really aligned with their interests and their goals.
So they weren't just passively accepting whatever training was offered to them.
No, not at all. They were taking ownership of their growth,
Yeah.
attending conferences, workshops, even online courses to stay up to date on all the latest teaching methods.
Right.
But they also went out and sought mentorship from more experienced teachers, both native and non-native English speakers.
It sounds like they were building their own support networks,
They were.
drawing on the collective wisdom of others who understood their experiences.
Exactly. And these networks, they became invaluable resources,
Yeah.
not just for professional guidance, but for emotional support, too.
Of course.
Many of the teachers talked about how important it was to connect with others who were going through those same challenges.
It makes sense. It's one thing to adapt to a new system on a practical level, but it's a whole other thing to actually feel like you belong.
You're absolutely right. And that sense of belonging, it was crucial for their well-being and their ability to thrive as teachers.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about surviving, it was about flourishing.
Right. I'm really seeing how their personal and professional journeys were so intertwined.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about acquiring new skills. It was about finding their place within a new culture and a new educational system.
Exactly. And that process of finding their place, it wasn't always easy.
Right.
They had to confront biases, to challenge assumptions, and advocate for their own voices to be heard.
We were talking earlier about how they faced discrimination and felt othered because of their accents.
Right.
Did they find ways to push back against that? Did they try to change the system from within?
They did, and that's what makes their story so inspiring.
Yeah.
They didn't just accept the status quo, they challenged it.
How so?
Well, some got involved in professional organizations working to influence policies and promote more recognition for non-native English-speaking teachers.
So they were actively working to create a more inclusive and equitable profession.
They were both for themselves and for others.
Amazing.
And they also challenged those norms through their teaching practices.
Okay.
They would consciously incorporate diverse accents and dialects into their lessons,
Wow.
exposing their students to all the richness of the different Englishes spoken around the world.
That's a powerful way to kind of disrupt the idea of a single standard English.
It is, and it sends a powerful message to their students that there are many ways to be proficient in English,
Right.
and that their own linguistic backgrounds are valuable assets.
So they weren't just teaching English, they were teaching up English,
Yes.
expanding their students' understanding of language and identity.
You've captured it perfectly.
Wow. And all of this ties back to that concept of hybrid professionals, right?
It does.
Teachers who embrace their diverse identities and use their unique experiences to create more inclusive and engaging learning environments.
Exactly. Their stories demonstrate that diversity isn't just a buzzword. It's a strength that enriches classrooms and communities.
We've talked a lot about the challenges they faced, but I'm curious to hear more about the positive aspects of their experience.
Yeah.
What did they find rewarding or fulfilling about teaching in Australia?
Well, despite all those difficulties, many of them expressed a deep sense of satisfaction in working with these diverse learners and seeing them grow.
Yeah.
They found it so enriching to interact with students from all these different backgrounds, sharing their knowledge of English and learning from their students' perspectives in return.
It sounds like this beautiful exchange of knowledge and culture.
They appreciated the multicultural nature of Australian classrooms and saw it as an opportunity to broaden their own horizons and challenge their assumptions about language and culture. They weren't just teaching, they were learning and growing alongside their students.
That's what makes teaching so special, right?
It is.
It's this constant process of learning and discovery, both for the teacher and the student.
Absolutely. And these teachers embrace that process wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
They saw themselves as lifelong learners, constantly looking for new knowledge and experiences to enrich their teaching.
Their stories are incredibly inspiring. They faced challenges, they adapted to a new system,
Yeah.
and ultimately carved out their own unique space within the Australian teaching landscape.
Right.
But what about their vision for the future? Where do they see themselves going from here?
That's a great question. And it leads us to the heart of what it means to be a hybrid professional in this globalized world.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
Let's delve into that in our next segment. So we've been talking about these hybrid professionals, these English teachers in Australia who learned English as a second language themselves.
Right.
They've adapted, they've challenged the system,
Yeah.
but where do they see themselves going from here? What's their vision for the future?
Well, their vision is really fascinating. They see themselves as global teachers. They recognize that English isn't tied to a single culture or country anymore. It's a language that connects people across borders, and they want to be part of that global conversation.
That makes a lot of sense considering their own experiences navigating different cultures and languages.
Right.
But how do they reconcile that global vision with the reality of teaching a specific variety of English on Australia?
They don't see it as an either situation.
Okay.
They understand that their students need to be proficient in Australian English to succeed here,
Of course.
but they also want to broaden their students' perspectives, show them that there are many ways to speak and use English.
So they're not abandoning the curriculum,
No.
but they're adding this layer of cultural awareness and global understanding.
Exactly. They might incorporate activities that expose their students to different accents and dialects, or they might share their own stories of learning English as a second language.
Right.
They're showing their students that language is about more than just rules. It's about connection and communication.
It sounds like they're really pushing the boundaries of what it means to be an English teacher,
They are.
drawing on their own experiences to create this richer learning experience for their students.
Yeah, and their vision for the future is really inspiring.
Yeah.
They see themselves as bridge builders,
Hmm.
helping their students navigate a world where English is increasingly used as this lingua franca, this common language for people from all different backgrounds.
This whole concept of hybrid professionals has been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
As we wrap up our deep dive, was there a particular story or insight that really resonated with you?
One story that really stuck with me was Janaki's.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, she had to put her teaching career on hold and work in a grocery store when she first arrived in Australia?
Yes. Her story was heartbreaking, but also so inspiring. She never gave up on her dream of teaching.
Exactly. She faced so many obstacles, but she persevered. She went back to school, got her qualifications recognized, and eventually found a teaching position where she could share her passion for language.
It's a powerful reminder that resilience and determination can really make all the difference.
It is, and it also speaks to the importance of creating pathways for skilled professionals like Janaki to re-enter their fields.
Right.
We need to recognize and value the experiences and expertise that immigrants bring to our communities.
Absolutely. So, as we conclude our deep dive today, what key takeaways do you hope our listeners will reflect on?
I think the most important takeaway is that diversity is a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond these narrow definitions of what it means to be a good English speaker or a good English teacher.
Right.
These hybrid professionals are showing us that there are many ways to be successful, many ways to connect with language, and many ways to contribute to our society.
Their stories really challenge us to think differently about language identity and inclusion.
They do, and they remind us that teaching is about more than just transmitting knowledge.
Yep.
It's about fostering, understanding, empathy, and connection across cultures.
It's been a really inspiring journey exploring the lives and experiences of these remarkable teachers.
It has.
Their stories have left me feeling really hopeful about the future of English language teaching.
Me too. They're paving the way for a more inclusive and dynamic approach to language education.
And they're a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more welcoming and equitable world for everyone.
Well said. That's a perfect note to end on. So until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep embracing the power of language to connect us all.